You remember the local carnival? The one that rolled into town once a year with the sticky tilt-a-whirl, the guy named Skeeter who swore you could win a giant stuffed bear just by throwing a dole ring onto a greased bottle? Well, whether you did or you didn't, the ledger lords of Silicon Valley saw that and said, what if we did that, but 24/7 on every phone in the world? And we bypassed every gambling law in the Federal Register. Welcome to Whatnot. Whatnot. It's the billion-dollar app that's currently turning the hobby into a digital crack house. We're talking about consumer psychology weaponized against guys in their basement who just wanted to buy a comic book but ended up mortgage deep in a repack scam. I'm CDawgFL, and this is a success breakdown of the world's largest unregulated casino, disguised as a garage sale. Grab your wallet, or don't, because by the time this video is over, you'll want to bury it in the backyard anyways. Before we get into the shady stuff, and believe me, it's darker than the logistics port at 3 a.m., let's look at the basic math. How does this monster actually make money?
Let's go.
Now, what is Whatnot? They are an auction-style company. The auctions last between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. With this fast-paced items closing at 30 seconds or less, the sellers set the duration, and the people bidding in the final seconds often extend the timer. This, in turn, creates a rapid competitive environment. So how does Whatnot actually make their money? Well, they take a flat 8% commission on most sales. You sell a $100 Pokemon card, they take $8. But they aren't done. They tack on 2.9% plus 30-cent processing fee for every single transaction. In total, they're skimming about 11 to 12% off of every single high-speed transaction. Now think about that volume. They are sitting on a mountain of transaction fees that would make a credit card company blush. And how do they get to that volume? By keeping the live aspect at a fever pitch. And as a seller, you apply, you get approved, which basically means you have a pulse and you go live. You show the goods, the buyer swipes the yellow bar to bid, and Whatnot handles the shipping label. It's a closed loop system where the platform takes zero risk, but grabs a slice of every single pie.
Mine.
Why is this more addictive than an espresso chocolate capsule at 6 a.m.? It's the timer. On eBay, you have time to think. You have time to realize that $400 for a pair of used sneakers is just a cry for help. But on Whatnot, you've got seconds. The seller is screaming, the chat is spamming W. Your brain's frontal cortex, the part that handles logic, just shuts off. This is frictionless spending. They aren't selling you a product, they're selling you the rush of winning. It's consumer psychology at its most predatory. They've successfully gamified the last mile of commerce. And the ledger lords are taking an 11% cut of that rush every single time. Now we get into the shady stuff. If you aren't familiar with breaking, let me explain the most legal way to lose your shirt. Breaking is where the seller chooses a mix of sport card boxes from retailers or hobby shops. Then they'll run teams. Basically, you pick a team that you like and you buy that team or that spot. After all the teams are sold, they break open the boxes. They go through the cards. All the cards from your team that you bought, you get to keep. So if your team is in there, you won. If not, you just paid $200 to watch a video of a guy in a hoodie throwing your money into a trash can. It creates a touch of gambling, and it's kind of a group activity, so a lot of people like it. Here in 2026, a massive legal filing hit Whatnot, alleging these aren't sales, they are unlicensed lotteries. So if I go to a gas station, I buy a scratch off, the state regulates the odds. If I do it on Whatnot, I'm trusting a guy who's streaming from his mother's garage. It's a casino without the buffet, and the house, Whatnot, gets paid, regardless of whether you get a hit or a handful of base cards from 1991. But it does get saltier. You ever wonder why that item you were bidding on suddenly jumped from $10 to $100 in 2 seconds? Well, enter the Shill Syndicate. Because there's no floor on these auctions, sellers use buddy bidding. They have their friends on their own alt account bidding up the price, pumping their numbers.
You sound like a pretty sincere guy.
When these sellers get caught, and they do, Whatnot's trust and safety team usually give them a timeout. That's a week-long vacation. Why? Because the premier shops move millions of dollars in gross merchandise volume. Banning them for good is like a casino banning a high roller who loses all the time. It's bad for the bottom line. And as the guy who knows logistics, this part makes my blood boil. The fake tracking phenomenon on Whatnot. Sellers are graded on shipping speed. So what do they do when they don't actually have the item? They print the label immediately. This shows the label created in the system. Now, in Whatnot's eyes, the seller is a hero. If the package sits in a pile, will the seller scrambles to find a replacement or just send you an empty bubble mailer to satisfy the system? By the time you realize you've been scammed, the ledger lords have already paid out to the seller, and you're stuck in an automated support chat with a bot. It's a logistics shell game designed to protect the platform's metrics while the buyer gets left at the port. Let's talk about the real reason Whatnot is allowed to run like the Wild West. You have to understand that in Silicon Valley, a company doesn't need to be good, it just needs to be valuable. We're talking about Veblen economics applied to a tech startup. Whatnot isn't just an app, it's a vessel for venture capitalists to find exit liquidity. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Those investors don't care if a 12-year-old gets scammed out of a Charizard. They care about the gross merchandise volume. They need the total dollar amount flowing through the app to look like vertical lines on a graph so they can sell their shares to the next group of greater fools. Looking at the last mile of this hobby, for 50 years the local card shop was the backbone of the industry, but Whatnot has engaged in a logistics scorched earth policy. By allowing high-volume sellers to dump inventory at high speeds, they've destroyed the market floor. When a massive premier shop buys an entire warehouse of product and breaks it for 18 hours straight, they flood the market. Prices tank. The local guy who bought 5 boxes for his shop just can't compete. He's dead in the water. This is Monopoly Psychology 101. They don't just want to be the best app. They want to be the only place the hobby exists. They are centralizing the logistics of collectibles into a handful of mega sellers who have a direct line to the platform's developers. And we have to talk about the concept of premier immunity. There have been cases where sellers were caught in 4K switching cards under the desk. And what happens? A 24-hour ban. Why? Because these sellers have account managers inside Whatnot. A private company has internal liaisons to the biggest scammers to make sure the revenue doesn't stop. It creates a two-tiered justice system. And it gets even darker. There are whispers about Whatnot being used as a massive money laundering pipeline. I sell a rare card to my buddy for $10,000. He pays me via the app. Whatnot takes their cut. I get the clean cash. Did the card even exist? Doesn't matter. The tracking number says the package has moved. When you combine unregulated gambling with high-speed transaction engine, you aren't just building a shopping app, you're building a shadow economy. And in 2026, the hammer is finally starting to fall. Look, at the end of the day, a marketplace is built on trust. But Whatnot has replaced that trust with dopamine. They've turned the hobby into a high-speed slot machine where the house always takes a cut. They want you to believe that this is the future of shopping. I call it the digital carnival. And it's just like the local fair. Once the lights go out and the trucks roll away, you're usually left with nothing but a lighter wallet and a headache.
Let me hear you say, that ain't right.
Carnival's moving on to the next town. My advice, don't be the one left holding the empty bag. I'm clocking out before the algorithm decides I've seen too much. I'm CDawgFL, and this has been a success breakdown of the billion-dollar app that's winning war on your common sense. If you want to keep digging into the hidden mechanics of the world before they password protect the door, stick around, or don't. The YouTube algorithm already knows what you're going to go do anyways. Man, imagine being the guy at the post office scanning 400 empty bubble mailers for a guy named Pokemon King 69. Well, the platform calls it innovation. Oh my God, my head hurts.